Welcome to Locked On Heat. On today's show, if the Heat miss out on Kevin Durant, it could make sense to turn to Trae Young, but questions remain on whether he can be a winning player.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day for daily content on the Heat. Click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you are following us on your podcast app. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Have a jam-packed show for you today. We haven't checked the mailbag in a while, David. It is overflowing with questions from the Locked On Heat Insider community on Subtext. Remember, you could join the Subtext community to contribute to these mailbags, plus a chance to ask questions to us via text and get the access first to breaking news. You could sign up with the link in the show notes. We have questions about Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and the draft, and what was sneakily one of the best Miami Heat teams. But let's start with this question from Malachi, who writes in, what would the pros and cons of trading for Trae Young be? And in y'all's opinion, what would it take to get him, and would you all do it? Which part of that do you want to start with, David? Pros, cons, what would it take?
I think what would it take, because that would set the kind of the bar for what Miami's roster would look like with Trae Young on it. And you would have to give up, I imagine, Tyler Hero in order to acquire.
Yeah, right? That seems likely. I don't know. I don't know that Trae Young is being shopped the way that he was reportedly being shopped over the last couple of years. But, you know, my feel for what was going on in Atlanta is that Trae Young was available. It was just they weren't getting anything that they thought was worthy of parting with Trae Young in return in terms of offers, right? We know that last summer they were shopping Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, kind of being like, okay, like we got to trade one of these guys, and they liked the offer they got from New Orleans. Obviously, got Dyson Daniels in that deal and won that trade. So unclear if they would be willing to trade Trae Young after they had separated the backcourt last year. I thought Trae Young was pretty good for them this past year, but you do wonder, with a new GM there, they might not be openly putting Trae Young on the trade block, but if you were an organization that called Atlanta, I don't think he's untouchable. You know, like you would have to give him something that they would have to say yes to, obviously, but I don't think it would be an immediate hang-up.
No, in fact, just the opposite. I mean, we see this all the time with front offices when there's a change in the direction. You kind of want to pick your own players. Like, you're not tied to anybody. You want to start your own identity. And I think we've seen what this version of the Hawks are capable of, and it's not much. Like, they had their kind of improbable run to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple seasons ago, and since then it's been pretty much a play-in team. And I think all the optimism that might have been there in Atlanta is pretty much seeped out. And they've gone through different permutations. They've tweaked things here and there, the DeJounte Murray thing being the biggest swing that they've taken. But for a new GM, you kind of want to say, you know what, I think we've seen what Atlanta is capable of. And I don't know that I necessarily want to tie my fate to a middling team with Trae Young as its leader. So I'd rather at least sell the promise of hope that maybe in the future will be better. And we just saw what Desmond Bane was able to, garner in terms of a trade package. I think Trae Young would probably get more than that. And that being the case, if somebody were to call Atlanta and see, for a player, as you said, that isn't really up for grabs or isn't really being actively shopped, you probably have to offer more in order to pry him free of Atlanta. And that being the case, they could get quite a haul for him. And this is the kind of relaunch that a GM can sell to their fan base. It's like, we love Trae. We appreciate everything he's done for us. At the same time, we want to start something new, go in a different direction with, blank as their identity, whatever they get in terms of a trade deal or a youth movement or kind of retooling for defense, something.
Yeah, building around Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, Dyson Daniels,
this
long defensive Zachary Reese trade. Not bad at all, right? But so
We saw Atlanta.
And,
we saw Orlando do it. That's
yep.
the kind of pitch you can make.
And the one other thing with Trae Young is he is technically extension eligible this summer. I don't know that he has to sign it, but depending if those conversations happen or if those conversations go south, just something to monitor. So you're right. It would probably be Tyler Hero. Now, I don't know, like you said, Atlanta has kind of been capped out in terms of they're pretty much just a play-in team right now. But hey, guess what? So is Miami. So trading Miami trading their guard for Atlanta's guard, kind of just swapping deck chairs on these two ships passing through the play-in tournament over and over again, kind of feels like a waste of time for everybody involved. But at the same time, Trae Young is an awesome playmaker. Him and Bam Adebayo make a lot of intuitive sense as your offensive anchor and your defensive anchor playing at those positions. My guess is that Atlanta would need a third team involved to move Tyler Hero to a third team to get them something that they really want. But that's not the important part for our part of this podcast, I suppose. It would really just be kind of looking at the Trae Young fit. So let's call it Tyler Hero plus the Duncan Robinson salary to help Atlanta get out of some salary cap trouble. Whatever, 2 first-round picks, whatever it might be, right? You've got Trae Young, Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins, Terry Rozier still ostensibly on the roster. Maybe there's other moves that you could make after a Trae Young deal, but Trae Young, Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins is your top 3. You still have Kel'el Ware, you still got Jovic, you still got Jaquez. I don't know. I'm kind of into it. The pros would be you've got an elite pick and roll playmaker. Trae Young would immediately be the best point guard in Heat history. Like he would just walk in, not with the resume, but just in terms of talent level. Like they've never had somebody quite like that.
No.
And he could unlock Bam. He can unlock Kel'el Ware and pick and roll. He is a genius level passer, Trae Young is. And the pros would be, we just saw what a genius level passer could do to unlock the Indiana Pacers. Could this do the same thing for us?
Theoretically, you could make the Kevin Durant move and still be able to acquire Trae Young as well. So what about a revamped roster of Trae Young, KD, and Bam Adebayo?
This is Damian Lillard and what was it? Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal together at the same time all over again. Wow, I didn't even think about that. That's crazy. I don't know.
So now you get Young, Bam, maybe keep Ware in that deal, KD. That's a team that could contend in the Eastern Conference.
I would think so. Yes, Kevin Durant, Trae Young, and Bam Adebayo. That's pretty interesting. If you can do that, do it. I don't care. Just do that. That sounds like a lot of fun. I would enjoy very much covering that.
To answer Malachi's question directly, you're giving up a very little. Maybe you're giving up something on defense because I think Tyler, as much as he's maligned for his defensive abilities, better than Trae Young. Like Trae Young is quite possibly the worst. I think statistically he's been shown to be the worst defender.
He was a little bit more competitive last year, but he's never going to be good, and he's always going to be worse than Tyler Hero. But it's not like Tyler Hero is still getting picked on, so it's not a wash because that's unfair to Tyler Hero, but it is almost of zero consequence to me in my decision-making process.
But given what he brings on the offensive end, you're getting the same scoring capabilities, if not greater, and the playmaking abilities that he brings to the table benefits everybody else. And so you kind of trust that Miami's stability, Miami's coaching, and the rest of the roster, whether it includes KD or not, is stable enough to kind of help Trae Young maximize what he can do and mitigate his obvious weaknesses, and that being very different than when they've done it in Atlanta. So I think you'd get a better version of Trae Young and certainly a better version of Miami as well. I'm not necessarily pitching Trae Young over Tyler Hero, but I think it's a good move for Miami if that was somehow able to happen.
It's easier to build around Trae Young and Bam than it is around Hero and Bam because, again, you have that number one playmaking guy in Trae Young. Tyler Hero is a number 2, right? And I think he's an elite number 2, but he's not a number 1 offensively. Trae Young is definitely a number 1 offensively, and if we're going to get into the cons of this, he is not in any way a number 2. That's sort of where he struggles. Now, Atlanta fans will tell you he was off the ball a little bit more and all this stuff last year, and that's true, definitely. but he's almost a non-factor off the ball. And unless Miami thinks that they could unlock some sort of another ability other than catch and shoot from Trae Young off the ball, you are pigeonholing yourself into, okay, we've got a number one option. How good is this number one option? Or are we going to run into the same wall that Atlanta kept running into and saying, we like him as a number one option, we don't love him as a number one option, and we clearly have a ceiling with him as a number one option? Or can Miami get more out of him, put that structure that you were talking about around him? Because you could also argue, well, if Trae Young was playing with somebody like Bam Adebayo, the Hawks probably go a lot further than what they've gone over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Because he just covers up for so many of his weaknesses. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating idea, but it's not the only trade guy that we're going to talk about here. Jrue Holiday, would he be a good fit with Miami with or without Kevin Durant? Plus, Russell Westbrook opting out, free agent. The Heat have beaten around that bush before. Could they do it again? We'll talk about that and more as we continue with our mailbag here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs. The intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere you've got to experience live. And this year's matchups are already delivering. Obviously, the NBA Finals has been a classic already. If you want in, Game Time makes it free, fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. You can go on the app right now and you get zone deals, and they're offering 10% off exclusive zone deals for FIFA Club World Cup matchups. I'm excited about the World Cup. I know you are too, Wes, and so are many of our listeners. I love that you can see the exact view before you buy. No surprise. It's one of the features that you love about this app. It makes things so convenient, and it makes things so ridiculously simple to get tickets. 2 taps and you're done. And right now, with the NFL schedule just being dropped, you better believe that you're going to be looking for tickets for upcoming games, and Game Time is the way to get those tickets. So you'll find great seats for as low as $100 thanks to exclusive discounts on NFL tickets and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA and get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back.
This next mailbag question comes from Antonio, who writes in, would Jrue Holiday be a good fit if the Heat get Kevin Durant? This is interesting to me. So let's talk about what a Jrue Holiday trade would look like. I don't know what Boston is realistically going to get for Jrue Holiday. So to back up really quick, the Celtics got to trade somebody, maybe even two somebodies, because of where they are in the tax. Jrue Holiday is the obvious guy. I think Kristaps Porzingis is the other guy. They're probably shopping both. It wouldn't surprise me if they traded both of them this summer. And by the way, they might have to trade Jaylen Brown. Like, they might have to have these conversations based on where they are in payroll. But let's just assume for our purposes here that they do trade Jrue Holiday. Boston fans are talking about, hey, maybe we can get a couple of nice rotation players back, save some money, all these things. I'm like, I don't know. Everybody loves Jrue Holiday. I love Jrue Holiday. We love Jrue Holiday. That is a bad contract for a guy that age who's making $32 to $35 million a year over the next 3 years, going to his age of 39 season or something. It's a lot of money. So I don't know that you're getting real value back for Jrue Holiday. And I only say that because they have to shed payroll. The Celtics do. Could you get Jrue Holiday for Duncan Robinson and Kyle Anderson and call it a day? Boston might have to actually attach assets to Jrue Holiday to get off of that contract at this point.
I mean, could you include Terry Rozier?
It wouldn't give them the salary cap. They need the salary cap relief now, not a year from now. So you would include Duncan Robinson so that they could waive him. And then you're just stuck with Kyle Anderson. And then Kyle Anderson's contract is actually non-guaranteed for the following season. So not this coming season, but the following season. They can actually get off of that too and save $9 million more dollars in a couple of years. But that would be Duncan Robinson would have to be part of it in order for it to make sense for Boston.
Look, I think Holiday's going to bounce back. And I, as you said, I think we're all fans of what he can do. He's just one of those guys around the league that's kind of generally beloved and just finds a way to contribute at every level. He struggled this year. Like, and I think injury is going to take its toll. To consider again, long playoff runs with Boston, it's going to add up for a player as you get older, and that being the case, that the downswing is going to happen at some point. But I think he'll be better than he was last year. And that's not saying much. He was oft injured and he was kind of ineffective when he was out there.
Maybe a little championship hangover.
Yeah, I think there's the capacity for him to improve on what was last year.
I
At
agree.
the same time, I don't know that he's the right fit for Miami. As much as he's like, this is a different team. Like if 3 seasons ago, when you've got Jimmy and you've got one of those aggressive defenses, you're looking for somebody who's just a point of attack defender over Goran Dragic, and maybe even an improvement over Kyle Lowry or whatever. Yeah, Jrue was a perfect fit. That would have been a great slam dunk for Miami at that point in time. Now, it's not that you don't need those things, but honestly, is he that much better than Davion Mitchell that you're willing to take on the salary at that age? And what you're still looking for and what you're missing is a playmaker, which is, something that you still need to add, because he's not that. He's never been that necessarily. He's a complimentary scorer, decent playmaker, but overall he's just known for his aggressive defense and what he was once capable of. And while that's great, and that would have been a good, much better fit for Miami a couple seasons ago, I don't think it's what they're looking for now.
Even if they get Kevin Durant. Is that what you mean? Yeah. So I'm trying to think even how this would get done. You and I both believe that Duncan Robinson would be included in the Kevin Durant deal. You can only trade Duncan Robinson once to a team that needs salary cap relief. That said, I've been a little surprised by the way the national media is talking about a potential Kevin Durant trade to Miami, because nobody's really talking about Duncan Robinson. Now, maybe it's as simple as they don't realize that Duncan Robinson's contract was 50% guaranteed, and that's why they're not including him in a deal. But you're hearing stuff out of Phoenix even that it would be like Wiggins and Rozier instead of Wiggins and Duncan Robinson, which again gives you salary cap relief in a year. I don't know how important that is to Phoenix. It feels like they need salary cap relief now. Maybe they can reroute Wiggins or reroute Rozier and get that salary cap relief in another way. But that salary cap relief is ready-made, turnkey if you just trade for Duncan Robinson. That said, let's say the deal is Durant for Wiggins, Rozier, and then whatever other stuff. Jaime Jaquez, first-round picks, whatever.
Please. That'd be great. Thank you, Phoenix.
Right? It's like, I won't talk you out of it. Like, that's what you want. And then you have the Duncan Robinson contract sitting there then to potentially use for Jrue Holiday. Now we're talking about a potential starting 5 of Holiday, Hero, Durant, Bam, Ware. You could bring back Davion Mitchell, have him be like the Jrue Holiday backup, which I quite like.
I do.
Maybe you can go get another shooter in free agency on a minimum. You've talked about Seth Curry. You'd still have that trade, the traded player exception. Maybe you could work out a deal with Boston where you say, hey, take Duncan Robinson. You can waive him, but we're also going to want to take, you want to save another $10 million? We'll take Sam Hauser's $10 million into our trade exception. We'll save you another $10 million in this deal. Maybe there's something there. I don't know that if Miami trades for Durant, they're signaling that they're going necessarily all in, but maybe and then have to deal with Jrue Holiday, because if you have Holiday, Hero, KD, and Bam, that's a lot of money that you're going to be paying this team 3 years from now, and maybe Miami doesn't care about 3 years from now, but Hero is going to need that extension. Maybe they think they could trade Hero, but now you're trading Hero for 38-year-old Jrue Holiday. That doesn't really make sense. I don't know that it makes sense, like Excel spreadsheet wise. You know what I mean? For down the line, and I kind of agree with you. It makes a little bit more sense to say we like Jrue Holiday. Would have really loved Jrue Holiday 3 years ago. For now, we'll be fine paying Davion Mitchell $12 million a year. But let's move on to this question from Malachi, who writes in: can the Heat sign Russell Westbrook? Do you think he would fit this team? I'd love to see him and Durant and Bam and Hero all on the same team. Your thoughts on Russell Westbrook, David?
Okay, I want to get to that last part first. KD and Westbrook on the same team, I don't think you can afford to make that happen. I think there's still whatever level of animosity there was might have dampened somewhat, but I think there's still enough of like, I really don't want to deal with Russell Westbrook. Like
or Wes.
I don't. I just don't think that I don't think they'd want to be on the same team.
Agreed.
But you know what? I also just only want to address the Westbrook thing because I'm like, I feel like we've talked about this every season for the last like 3 off seasons. Is Westbrook an option? Like, could you trade for Russell Westbrook? Even when he had the,
I feel like every local show on the Locked On Podcast Network has gotten a question about Russell Westbrook if they haven't already been one of the teams associated with Russell Westbrook.
And there was that time when he had that tremendous salary. And it's like, oh, would he be a good fit for Miami, et cetera? You can move a contract. Even you saw what happened with Westbrook. He's been moved all these times, and then now he is, and he kind of emerges as like he has a second renaissance in his career in Denver. I don't know. I really don't know. I'd love to think that Westbrook could come here and provide intensity and energy and all the Russell Westbrook things. But we've also seen him not be able to provide those things until last year. And I don't know if I can live on a steady diet of clanked 18-foot jumpers all the time.
We just did, right? It'll never get better for Russell Westbrook at this stage of his career than it was last year for Denver, playing with Jokic.
Playing with Nikola Jokic, yeah.
Miami can't offer that kind of infrastructure. This is a hard pass for me. This is a very, very hard pass for me. I actually really like watching Russell Westbrook play basketball. I just enjoy how hard he plays, and there's a level of appreciation for that. That said, I do not want to be on here doing credit cookies or blame pie or whatever, having to talk through the Russell Westbrook. It feels exhausting to have to go through the Russell Westbrook experience with half of our fan base being like, he doesn't play enough, and the other half of the fan base being like, get him off the team. I'm just... Again, there's too many players on the team right now that Heat fans feel that way about. I don't need another one like that in Russell Westbrook.
That's a great point. And his fans, because he's Russell Westbrook, he's a Hall of Famer. And the end of his career has been, not great, but he still has a couple seasons left, I would think, based on what we saw from him last year. And yet those fans will migrate. And so now you're taking on Russell Westbrook fans who are going to be watching Heat games and saying,
it's like a Taylor Swift hive.
Spo doesn't know what he's doing.
Like, do we need this?
Yeah. Spo doesn't know what he's doing. Like, you just got to unleash him. It's exhausting.
I don't need it. You're right. Yep. The more we talk about it, the worse of an idea it sounds. Is the league actually getting worse at doing the NBA draft? We have a really interesting question coming up next in the mailbag here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by OLIPOP. It's a new kind of soda made for people who love the classic taste of soda and want something that supports their health. With just 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can, OLIPOP is reimagining soda in a way that's better for your gut. Traditional sodas are loaded with sugar, like 39 grams in a regular Coke or 44 grams in an orange Fanta. OLIPOP flips that script with just a fraction of the sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and gut-friendly ingredients like OliSmart, a blend shown to support digestive and overall health. It's a soda that tastes like the real thing, but actually does something good for your body. They're very popular here, and there's so many different flavors that we've tried already at the house. What flavor are you trying first? There's cherry cola, classic grape, or maybe Dr. Goodwin. They're Dr. Pepper dupe. You've got classic soda. You've got crisp apple. That's my son's favorite. He loves those. You can't get enough of them. I'm trying to limit his soda intake at age 6. And that is like fighting an uphill battle, especially with the OLIPOP cans here at the house. But you know what? If you like them, you're going to love these. If you like soda in general, you're going to love OLIPOP. There's so many different flavors to choose from. And they're just a great bargain, too. Because right now you can get a free can of OLIPOP. When you just buy any 2 cans in store, they'll reimburse you for 1. You just head to drinkOLIPOP.com. That's drinkOLIPOP.com/LockedOnBA, and you claim your free can to find OLIPOP near you. That's drinkOLIPOP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back.
A couple more questions here on the mailbag. Billy writes in, is the league getting worse at assessing draft talent? Of the 10 starters in the finals, only Chet is a top 10 pick. Bam and Hero are all-stars taken at 14 and 13. Should Miami value their end-of-lottery picks more than they have? Really interesting point by Billy. I got to say.
Question. Yeah, I love it. And I think
is that true,
people
though?
around the league are noticing.
Of the 10 starters in the finals, only Chet is a top 10 pick. Obi Toppin was the 8th pick, but he comes off the bench for Indiana.
Sure.
So I guess this is true.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody's pointed out to. I remember when Miami was making their finals run, like obviously with Gabe Vincent and Max Strus in the lineup, it just became kind of like, oh, this team of undrafted players, 8 undrafted players on the roster, et cetera, et cetera. No player picked before anything, no top picks in the draft. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the identity. And then we've seen over the last few seasons how much depth matters in terms of building a quality team. And for as much as you'd like to get a top 5 talent and whatever that used to entail, you're also going to need guys pick 15 through 60 to find a way to pop and make an impact. And you can see guys finding their niche. It's great to have two-way players, but guess what? At the very least, if you can be an elite playmaker or an elite shooter or an elite defender, you're going to find a way to make an impact. And I don't think to answer the question, the league is getting worse at draft analysis. I just think with the one and done system being what it is, and this is not a knock on that because I totally understand players wanting to get their opportunity to get paid, even though with NIL, who knows if that's going to change even. There's just so much less information out about a player. I mean, we've done several draft reviews and we're talking about players like Thomas Sorber. He played 20 games and it's like, well, he could be a top 15 pick. You're basing that off of 20 games. Like, I mean, that's not really enough to warrant you just get the kind of sample size that you need in order to determine whether or not he's going to be a NBA player that can continue to play at a high level, et cetera. And I just think that there's a lot of players like that who just, they don't have enough experience to really evaluate. So you're kind of hoping that they pop. You see, oh, I really liked X. And it just turns into being more about an evaluation of their talent or ability and considering off the court stuff like work ethic and tenacity and whether or not they have that drive, what makes them kind of want to pursue that. And look, in that sense, the Heat is really good because they trust their draft analysis to know that a player is going to find a way to achieve and do the work necessary in order to grow and develop their game. But I mean, I just think it's much more difficult to analyze players with such little time to really get a feel for what this. I mean, the draft, and I mean, it hasn't been like this maybe for a while, but you used to have 3 or 4 years to really get a good feel for a player. And it's like, oh, okay, now he's coming out of the draft, or now we've seen what he can do as a senior. He led X team to the the NCAA Final Four. You can kind of trust that because they had played 70-something, 80-something games. Not anymore, and so I just think it's going to be challenged even more and much more of a difficulty in order to try and find the talent that you're looking for and then evaluate it properly.
Yeah, I don't know that the league has gotten worse at evaluating talent. I think, to your point, it's gotten harder to evaluate that talent because you've got so much one and done. You've got people in the elite league over here, and then the overseas influence, the European influence is so much that Jokic goes in the second round, Giannis is in the middle of the first round, Pascal Siakam doesn't get picked until 27. All those things. So you've got just a more diverse base that you're pulling from with a lot less, and that old school base that you would pull from, college basketball, has gotten a lot less experienced and a lot harder to evaluate, to your point. So I don't think evaluation has gotten worse. I think evaluation has gotten harder. That said, I give credit to Billy for pulling the stat. It's creative stat making, though. Because if you extend it going from the arbitrary top 10, a nice round number, to just the lottery, 5 of the 10 starters were lottery picks in the finals. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Tyrese Halliburton, Miles Turner, and Aaron Nesmith were all lottery picks. So that said, lottery picks, high first-round picks, still the basis of championship-level basketball teams. Even if you cut it off at 10, if you just extend it 4 more picks, all of a sudden, oh my God, it does seem like we need a lot of bites at the apple in the lottery in order to build these lottery picks. But we've made this point before about Indiana, right? You don't have to be drafting there necessarily to go get those guys. Indiana has 3 guys in the lottery of that Tyrese Halliburton draft. They did not have a lottery pick in that draft. They didn't have a first-round pick in that draft, and yet they still, a few years later, come away with 3 different guys that were picked in that lottery: Halliburton, Aaron Nesmith, and then Obi Toppin coming off the bench for them. Last question here for our mailbag. In the same vein of today's episode of Why to Trade for Kevin Durant, I think we mostly agree if Bam and Goran Dragic were healthy, the bubble Heat would have won that title versus the Lakers. So which team is hypothetically better, Bubble Heat or a potential 2025 roster of Tyler, Bam, KD, and whatever is left? David, I know you feel strongly that the Bubble Heat would have won had Goran not twisted his ankle there. I'll let you answer this and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I can't see that team losing to even a version with KD. It just seemed like they were so intent and so perfectly suited for those really adverse conditions. And we saw a historically good version of Jimmy Butler, very much younger than he was towards his end, at the end of his Heat stint, and engaged and really just carrying the team and infusing that group with a sense of purpose and belief that I don't think we'll get from a Durant-led team. It's not a knock on KD because he's still a great player. I just think he's more of the kind of passive sort of leadership, whereas Jimmy, as we all know, in your face, challenges you at every opportunity. You better work, you better do what you have to do and find a way to overachieve. And that's what that group, to me anyway, really symbolized and embodied. And so I don't see, I would think, honestly, had that group stayed healthy, and I know it might sound ludicrous, they might have challenged like the big three version of the Heat. And I, that we hold that team in incredibly high regard, but just because that team was so engaged and locked in under those conditions, take them out of those conditions, I might have a different story. But that bubble version of that team, covering them by myself during a really difficult time in the country with lockdown and everything else like that, that's an experience. I cannot disassociate everything else that was taking place at that point in time and being able to appreciate the level of basketball they were playing. So I'd have to give the nod to the bubble Heat. Absolutely.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have beaten the big three Heat.
They might have.
I don't know. That'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.